folks, welcome into another episode of That Betting Show for August 15th, 2019. Your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. He's Teddy Sabransky. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. I'm Donnie Seymour at Right Side VP. Let's get right into it. Those Mets, Teddy, that were on fire, and you talked about it quite a bit. Getting into a tougher part of the schedule, suffering their third straight setback last night. It was to the Atlanta Braves. And also, big news tonight, as we love, Teddy. It's a Football Thursday here at SportsbookReview.com. We're going to take you down the preseason path tonight as Week 2 gets underway. But let's get right to the hot topics here. The Braves strike late to down the Mets 6-4. A 2-1 lead, Teddy. We talk about it. Ooh, look at those starters for the New York Mets. Look at how dominant those New York Mets starters are. Well, still got to get through the game. A lot of times, Teddy, they can't go the full 9 innings, and they give it up in the 7th inning. Matz goes 6 innings, 1 earned run. Dallas Keuchel, phenomenal as well. 6 innings, no earned runs. The Mets now sit plus 225 to make the playoffs, Teddy. Just a couple days ago, they sat at plus 100.
Sure. I mean, look, we told you this was going to happen. If you've been watching this show, you already know that the Mets are going to have problems against the Braves, and they did, and they are, and we'll talk about today's game in just a few minutes. But the Mets feasted on the week for an extended stretch after the All-Star break, and then they got 24 of 27 against playoff contenders. That's a problem. And Atlanta has shown they're the better of these two teams. Certainly their lineup, there's no comparison. The Braves hit a lot better than the Mets, but we got to point a finger here. I don't point a lot of fingers. I do my best not to point fingers. But Callaway, what are you doing? Matz went 6 strong, all right? Low pitch count. He hits in the 7th, at the top of the 7th, and gets a hit and scores a run to put the Mets in the lead. And then Callaway brings in Lugo in the bottom. After he already didn't pinch hit for his pitcher, turned out to be the wrong move, and it cost Mets backers dearly.
Now, it's always interesting when you see those moves, and it makes you want to scratch your head. Almost looked like it worked out in the favor, but then getting bombed in the bottom of the 7th inning. Did score 2 runs in the top of the 9th inning, so that bullpen that Atlanta thought it fortified at the trade deadline is leaking a little bit of oil here. But we'll keep an eye on those New York Mets for the rest of the summer to see how they can get back into contention in Major League Baseball. Let's go around the league, Teddy, and see what happened yesterday. Yankees say goodbye to the Orioles with another victory. It never ends. And finally, the series between the New York Mets and, the New York Yankees and the Baltimore Orioles is over. We don't have to watch it anymore. 16 straight wins they end up with, Teddy. 61 blasts and outscoring their opponent 151-83 while doing so. The Red Sox take back-to-back games and cool off those Indians, but also the Twins weren't able to capitalize on that Indians loss as they lost to the Milwaukee Brewers, who are fighting for their life also in the NL wildcard. Welcome back, Charlie Manuel to Philadelphia. He arrives at 3 o'clock, doesn't really talk to anybody, and it still works, Teddy. 11 runs on the board, included a grand slam by JT Realmuto and 2 home runs by Bryce Harper. Teddy, you always knock my Phillies. We're making a run now.
Maybe. I mean, if a hitting coach can turn a mediocre offense into a good one for an extended period of time, you might be able to make a run. Although, look, Cole Hamels, his last 2 starts, 5 innings, 12 earned runs allowed. Maybe some of that was Manuel. Maybe some of that was Hamels just didn't have another good game. I love this quote from Joe Madden, by the way. When your team has gone to the playoffs 4 years in a row, it's hard to accuse them of a lack of hunger. What I've seen this year is teams have caught up. That's what I've talked about. It's not the same sachet that we've had maybe the last couple years ago to get there. It's tougher. Other teams have gotten better, and we've got a pretty big target working on us now. What about the Red Sox yesterday, dude? The Red Sox, and every time I think, all right, Boston's done. Boston's completely done. Boston has no chance. They find a way to win a game or two. They did that yesterday in Cleveland. Both those teams looking a little bit vulnerable, but the one that the team that Cleveland is battling against, Minnesota, they're looking less and less like a playoff team. 2-6 their last 8 games? They absolutely gave away a game they had to have last night, blowing a 2-run lead in the 8th with defensive miscues and mental miscues. And, Rocco Baldelli after the game, it was kind of self-inflicted tonight. We just have to make those plays. Twins going through a slump at the very wrong time.
Yeah, we'll go over a couple of Major League Baseball games a little bit later in the show today, but it is fun with Major League Baseball. As we always talk about some of the old heads, I don't like the extra wild card. It really opens it up to more day-to-day baseball heading down the stretch. It should be a lot of fun. Spend it with us right here on That Betting Show on SportsbookReview.com. Now we head around the league in training camp. Now, Yesterday, usually a little bit quieter than normal. Why is that? Most teams going through some pregame walkthroughs, shutting down camp. As you saw on Tuesday, a lot of the teams in the NFL actually broke camp, Teddy. So hopefully, with those reporters who had, full coverage, beginning of the practice to the end of the practice, now go back to regular season rules where they can only watch usually the team stretching out. So we'll try to dig in and get as much information as we can. But here's the information that we hate as sports gamblers and lovers of the NFL. The NFLPA issues their old work stoppage guide for the possible lockout. Now, granted, the lockout possibly or strike would not come until March of 2021. But anytime you hear labor unrest, it always makes us nervous. Even a couple years ago in the NFL, going right down to the wire before they striking a deal. Hopefully, they can find that middle ground here and keep it moving forward. And Antonio Brown, always in the news. Yes, cryotherapy. Yes, he doesn't like his helmet. But now also, Teddy, stemming back from the Pro Bowl last year, rents a mansion in Orlando. 50 people over for dinner. How about it, chef? I'm not paying you. Owes $38,000 for services rendered but not paid for. And how about the Colts? Interesting news coming out of the Colts yesterday, Teddy. Would like to name a starter by the third preseason game, even though Andrew Luck is not going to play. It's kind of interesting notes that are coming out of camp there. And also the Lions being real careful with Matthew Stafford. Last year took a beating and certainly want to give him a few days off here in preparation for the rest of the summer and season, Teddy.
Well, and supposedly the scenario with Antonio Brown is that he fired the guy, the chef, before everything was taken care of. But he kicked him out of his house and get out of here. I don't want your food. I don't want your stuff. So there's obviously a dispute over payment. That has nothing to do with what's going on the field. What's going on in the field, there are two things to talk about, really. We need to talk about the Indianapolis Colts right now because what we're hearing and seeing is very scary with Andrew Luck. All right. Jacoby Brissett, the backup, I'll call him decent the year that Andrew Luck was out. He was not decent versus the Bills last week. The third stringer, Phillip Walker, is clearly not an NFL starting quarterback. Chad Kelly, the fourth stringer, fighting for a job with Walker, the third stringer. He looked good against fourth stringers last week. We're talking about a guy who was Mr. Irrelevant in the draft in 2017, the very last draft choice. But if Andrew Luck is out and misses any substantial, this is a 6, 7, maybe an 8-win team without Luck. It's a 9, 10, 11-win team with him. Expect the markets to price Indy accordingly. And right now, the markets don't know. So information is key when it comes to Indianapolis. You talked about Matthew Stafford, and they're trying to give him extra days rest to keep him fresh for the season. If you watch the Lions' offensive line against New England last week, maybe that's why Stafford's getting extra rest. That line was an absolute train wreck, much the way it was for an extended portion of last season. So Stafford getting extra rest because Stafford's getting beaten up, and that's an issue moving forward for, I don't think any team in the NFL, though maybe Jacksonville looked worse last week than Detroit, but not many teams look worse than the Lions did in their preseason opener.
It's also interesting, Teddy, that we take a look at, going over certain things with the Indianapolis Colts. Also, we talked about yesterday the team total coming off the board. Yesterday, I saw some of those lines frozen across the board as well with the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, it's not a running back. It's not a wide receiver. It's not a DB. It is Andrew Luck that's going to have major implications on that opening game. We'll keep you posted when that line does come back up and maybe what it resurfaces at. But let's start talking about some real numbers here, Teddy. SBRodds.com, the best place on the internet to get those line movements. Guess what? We got some lines on the move today, as usual. The Mets and Stroman on the move. The Mets, 3 straight losses, look to bounce back. Marcus Stroman's going to take them out on the road versus the Atlanta Braves. Stroman versus Tehran, who's pitched much better this year, especially at home, than what he's been doing in the previous few years at SunTrust Ballpark. Mets, Braves favored, -121, total, Teddy, of 10.
Yeah, the early money coming against the Mets. Market's saying don't expect a sweep in this series. That being said, we've seen money come against Tehran regularly. The markets do not like his advanced metric stats. They could care less that his last 7 starts, he's got a .91 ERA. He's been solid. They could care less that he's got a 2.68 career ERA against the Mets in 28 appearances against them. It's not a short sample size. This particular lineup, Tehran has had success against. He's had success in recent starts, and the markets care none of that. And meanwhile, Stroman's been roughed up since he arrived in New York. I can understand the concept here. Markets don't like Tehran. Mets aren't going to get swept, yada, yada. But not my money. Although, worth noting, Tehran has struggled in 3 starts against the Mets so far this season.
And also, McNeil had looked to be out, Teddy, a couple weeks now with that hamstring injury, leading off, hitting over 300. Certainly a catalyst for that offense. You saw it last night. Weren't able to get much done versus the Atlanta Braves. We'll see if that tone changes tonight. And a high total in Texas. However, we do have a pitching change, but still hasn't made an impact over on that total yet. Opens up at 11.5. Now we're seeing 12s out there at this current moment. The Rangers, if we take a look at SBRodds.com, and even with the pitching change, now looks like Pineda has been placed into the lineup. And 150, 155s have now turned into 170s and 165s across the board, still with that 12 on the board. So it's going to be Pineda versus Payano starting in front of Devin Smeltzer here for those Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, two teams headed in the wrong direction right now. We talked about it a few minutes ago. The Twins just 2-6 their last 8 ball games, giving one away last night that they probably had to have. Rangers struggling right now. All of a sudden, they're 10 games out of the wild card spot. A disappointing 3-6 road trip as they return home. The quote from manager Chris Woodward, that's the message. Keep playing hard, keep doing our things. Don't give in. Keep trusting we can play better, that we're a better team. They won one to close out the road trip. But, Texas, only once in their last 11 ball games have they had 10 hits in a contest. 7 runs yesterday matched what they produced in the last 4 games. But the markets are saying, don't trust either one of these starting pitchers. They didn't like Smeltzer. They don't like Pineda. They surely don't like Payano, who's 2, 3, 4 inning guy. He's not going to make it twice through the batting order. So both teams expected to rely heavily on their bullpens today. The market's not expecting those bullpens to be shutting everybody down.
Let's get back to the NFL tonight. We do have a line on the move. Actually, 2 lines on the move in this one game here, Teddy. The Packers and the Ravens total drops. Checking out SBRodds.com early in the week. We were sitting around that 40 range, now dipping down to 36.5 across the market. And also, if we're taking a look at lines, last time we previewed this, Ravens opened up around that 5 range, or sitting around that 5 range early in the week. That has now dipped back to 3.5. We do know Aaron Rodgers supposedly is going to play the entire first quarter, but we know how that changes, and that's fluid. But the one thing we do know, this one team, the Ravens, really care about the final result in the preseason. This will be an interesting one with both of these lines on the move, Teddy.
See, it's an interesting question. Does Harbaugh really care that much, or is it just a game plan that gives opponents fits in August? The Ravens blitz, all right, and teams that blitz in the preseason will give opposing teams problems. And we saw that certainly last week against the Jags. That was a no-contest game, and they're expected to blitz again today. We're going to see starters for both teams playing, at least expected to play around a quarter, first-string offense and first-string defense for Green Bay. The quote from LaFleur, a quarter or so. We're always fluid with that, depending on how the game goes and how much time they have. But everybody should be prepared to play a quarter or so. You talked about that total. All right. Well, PM thunderstorms, and nobody risks anything when it comes to a wet field in August. LaFleur talking about the offense, quote, I think it's a work in progress. I really feel confident with our number ones, they'll be able to handle a lot of the pressures. But now it's not like we got a full-fledged game plan, but you better have some semblance of a plan for them. They're an extremely difficult defense, but there is some carryover in terms of stuff that we want to do from a defensive perspective. That's the first stringers. Baltimore is going to blitz with their second stringers and their third stringers. That's likely to be a problem for Green Bay tonight. The market's reflecting that with the total.
Yep, we'll go over a couple more games here in just a few moments. But we're going to flip back to Watch What You Bet here and talk a little bit of Major League Baseball. Hallelujah, Teddy. The Phillies looking to go for a sweep. My goodness. Those words around these neck of the woods here in the Northeast certainly haven't happened all that frequently this year. Phillies looking for that rare sweep tonight. The Phillies, if we take a look at SBRodds.com, Smiley versus Darvish on the mound. Darvish sitting 141, 150 range, depending where you're shopping at, with a total of 9.5 across the board. The Cubs, the one number you can't really get away from with them, Teddy, 23-37 on the road. Phillies are hot at the plate finally. We'll see if it turns over tonight. Darvish has been pretty solid this season. Smiley, who was a disaster early on, comes to the Philadelphia Phillies, has a start or two that looked pretty good, but now dipping back into the well and giving up the long ball. We'll see if that continues tonight against a Cubs lineup that certainly can go yard in Citizens Bank Park. Cubs, Phillies tonight, Teddy.
Sure. I mean, look, the Cubs pitching staff is a problem right now. A big problem. We saw Hamels get lit up for his second straight start yesterday. I mean, lit up. He couldn't get anybody out. Kyle Hendricks just gave up 7 runs in his most recent start. John Lester, one start removed from giving up 9 runs. Hamels quote, "I guess we're competing to who could suck the most after yesterday's start." So here's Darvish, and Darvish gave up 3 home runs in his last start. He did strike out 9 without giving up a walk, but against the Reds, took the loss in that ball game. He's only won 4 games all year. And meanwhile, you get these quotes out of Philadelphia, after Manuel coming back, and all of a sudden everyone going nuts with the world, remembering the World Series. Gabe Kapler, quote, "There was incredible energy in the ballpark, and rightfully so. Manuel certainly adds to that loose, relaxed vibe. He's laid back. He believes in our hitters. I think he's going to make sure our hitters know that. And our hitters look like they believe in themselves today. It's no surprise." Realmuto after the grand slam. "We definitely feel like we're going to have to carry the load. Our pitching staff is going to get the job done. They're going to do it well. We feel like as an offense that we can do better." So you say, am I ready to lay a price with the Cubs here? No, I am not. Although from a situational standpoint, off of back-to-back losses, in theory, this is supposed to be a Chicago spot.
Yeah, Jay Bruce be out a couple more weeks for the Philadelphia Phillies. Also, Corey Dickerson escaped a broken hand. I don't know how he did it by getting hit by a pitch the night before. Teddy talked about it yesterday. Did not play yesterday, but should be day-to-day and available to be in the lineup as soon as possible. Back to the football field. The Raiders, Teddy, invade Arizona. Cardinals favored -2.5, a total of 40 NFL preseason action. This is an interesting one here, Teddy, for you guys out on the West Coast. This is an ESPN game, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. out there on the Pacific. So a nice little treat there from State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Arizona expected to start Kyler Murray, and we're going to get a look at David Carr for the first time this year out in Oakland.
Again, when you're trying to handicap these preseason games, yes, Arizona will start Kyler Murray. He'll play a couple of series. David Carr will start for Oakland. He'll play a series 2, 3. Neither guy will be on the field in the second quarter. Neither guy will be running the 2-minute drill before halftime. Neither guy will be running the offense at any point in the second half. When are point spread outcomes determined? Generally after halftime. So don't worry about the starters. Worry about everybody else. All right, Oakland's from a situational standpoint. They played on Saturday. They won. Now they got to travel for a Thursday game. Not a great situational spot. We have the QB rotation for Oakland. It's going to be mostly Nathan Peterman and Mike Glennon. In theory, that's a bet-on duo for preseason football. It really is. You have, both guys have started NFL games. Neither guy has necessarily lit up opposing defenses so far this preseason. So the question is that duo a bet on or a bet against? Now, make no mistake about it. Arizona's first stringers got destroyed last week. They were annihilated. The Chargers did whatever they wanted up and down the field. Arizona did nothing. And then the Chargers sat their starters, and Arizona won the rest of the game. But Kingsbury has said it. He's not going to open up his offense in the preseason. He's not going to show us what he's going to do in September here in August. Arizona only ran 59 plays last week. I'll take the over 59 plays for the regular season week 1. I'll take the over 59 plays anytime Kyler Murray plays 4 quarters, but that wasn't the case last week. Brett Hundley came in, had 1 touchdown drive, was a 2-minute drill just for halftime. Was a nice drive. They ran no huddle and they put it in. They had a 28-yard touchdown drive off a turnover and then a 55-yard field goal. It wasn't like this offense was clicking on all cylinders last week. I'm not convinced it's going to click on all cylinders today either. Arizona, not a team I'm excited about laying points with, even at this young stage of the season.
Teddy, being on point and making the right moves, obviously being a host, it took me a year and a half to get the San Diego Chargers correctly to the Los Angeles Chargers, and I still haven't gotten it right yet with David Carr and Derek Carr, which I led you in the wrong direction. Derek Carr of the Oakland Raiders will play tonight, and I will confuse this one until the day I die between these two quarterbacks here, but we'll get it right next time as we continue to move on here in football. Foles gets a shot for Philadelphia. He's ready, Teddy. He's done all that good in Philadelphia. He's raised an MVP Super Bowl trophy. He's raised a Super Bowl trophy. He's going to beat not so fast tonight. Carson Wentz will not be available tonight, and neither will Nick Foles. So that battle we were looking for, maybe we'll get the pregame hug, a little bit of a dap up at midfield. How's it going? How's training camp going? That's all you're going to see from these two starters tonight, and that is the reason that we're checking out SBRodds.com right now, Teddy. I see 33.5s now out on the board with an opening line of 38. Not a lot of offense. We previewed it earlier in the week. Now it's game day, and I'm not feeling a little bit better at both of these teams scoring at all, Teddy. Tonight, Jacksonville and Philadelphia.
Well, considering the two teams combined to score 10 points last week, I'm not surprised we've seen a little bit of under money. And for what it's worth, the car situation, I got the LA Chargers down most of the time now. But the two cars, David and Derek, so the way I remember names, either the first letter or how long the name is. They both have the same first letter, and they both have the same length of name. So I make that mistake all the time. I couldn't even tell you right now which one's the right name. And I pay attention to this stuff, obviously, every day. Let's talk about Foles and Philadelphia and Jacksonville. Again, the media, Nick Foles has nothing to do with this game, okay? The Eagles do not care. Peterson's just about said it out. Those words haven't come out of his mouth. If you're reading coach speak, you understand very, very well. The Eagles do not care. There's going to be no Nate Sudfeld. He's the second stringer. No Carson Wentz. He's the first stringer. That means lots of Cody Kessler and lots of Clayton Thorson, and that is not a bet-on duo. The Jags, last week, they sat 30 players from their two deep. They gained 2.1 yards per play. This week, Doug Marrone saying, I plan on using the same formula for playing time that I did last week, meaning 30 players could sit out again. There's going to be lots of Gardner Minshew, mustache, and lots of Alex Mago. And again, 2.1 yards per play last week. That is not a bet on duo. Yeah, I can see the under money from a side perspective. I ain't laying with anybody in this game. I don't want either team.
Yeah, I'll be watching it just because I'm an Eagles fan, but if there anybody else be watching this game, absolutely not. Quick off the mic topic today, we'll talk about Teddy. If you took me off the air, if you didn't let me cap games or watch sports for 1,092 days, maybe I might get a little bit stir crazy. Then we get back to Conor McGregor, who obviously hasn't fought in 1,092 days. Getting some light work at the bar, yet another video shows up. He shows up to the bar, Teddy. He's offering his proper 12 whiskey across the bar. Somebody doesn't want to take a shot of his whiskey. So he punches him in the head and immediately gets removed from the bar. Conor McGregor out here, Teddy. Get him back in the ring. The ring's not outside. Come on, UFC. Make it happen.
So look, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Conor McGregor because one of the biggest bets I've ever made was against him. And he, of course, lost to me in the Mayweather fight. So I will always thank Conor McGregor for having that fight. And it was a truly enjoyable evening. That being said, Conor McGregor is completely irrelevant right now. He is absolutely a non-factor. And the fact that we're even talking about him, I mean, from a sports betting perspective, Conor McGregor, you can go away now. Thanks for stopping by.
I'll tell you who's not going away. Both me and Teddy right here on That Betting Show. Another episode down for August 15th, 2019. Your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. A complete section tonight of NFL preseason football. We got more preseason football tomorrow, so join us once again when we go over that card and set you up for the weekend. He's Teddy Covers. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. I'm Donnie Seymour, right side VP. Enjoy your football and join us once again tomorrow on SportsbookReview.com.